Hello, welcome to Milkshake Monday BackDrop. This is a special edition for me because I have with me tonight both of my daughters, Albani Brown and Faith Helm, and we are going to talk about when the crash does not kill you, and I'm just excited to have them both. So I'm going to let them ask me whatever questions, and they'll work it out of who wants to go first, but I haven't heard any of the questions, and welcome Albani. We're glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Sorry, I just got. Hello, Albany. You're my sister. Oh, I'm joking. Oh, okay. Hello, hustlers and gangsters. Okay. Did you want to start first, or did you want me?
Yeah. Hey everyone. My name is Albani Brown. I'm Anita Helm's daughter and Faith Helm's older sister, and I'm just glad to be here and talk a little bit about the episode.
Great. So you going first?
Cool. I can go first because so as you know, we are talking about episode.
It's 349, which is when the crash doesn't kill you.
And I have some miniature questions only because I didn't really have a lot of asking per se, more just like go in depth of what you meant by it in your episode. So you talked about
I have questions too.
Okay.
Yeah, and questions too, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Both of them have questions.
Yeah, we're of course. So you talked about Paul's journey, and you illustrated God's purpose amidst trials and tribulations. You talked about trials and tribulations more in depth, but you said a key thing of understanding your trials and tribulations. What do you mean by that?
Okay, I got to try to understand that question for a second. Give me a second. I spoke that all of us are going to go through issues in our lives. Mm-hmm. We're all going to have trouble, and I used the three words. I said chosen, trouble, and we're all snatching out. So no matter who we are, God has told us that in this life we're going to have trouble. Mm-hmm. You just said trials and tribulations. That I just used the word trouble to make it easier for people that don't know a lot about churchy words. So it could be totally different from how Albany or me or you go through something that we consider to be problematic, an issue in our lives. So I'm just saying in general, all of us are going to have trouble, and God told us about it in advance.
But during those times of like trials and tribulations, though, like not a lot of people. Like, I have friends who always come and ask me like, why am I going through this right now? Why am I in this situation right now? Why is God putting me through this? Or sometimes they don't even bring up God. They just feel like it's all their fault. How can, as us Christians, be better in conversating? Because all I say is like, this is, sometimes it's a test. Sometimes God is just, having us go through our trial and tribulation to see, He wouldn't let us go that far. There's some saying that there's like, He wouldn't let us,
only as much as you can bear.
Yeah, and I never like to use that, but at the same time, I just have a lot of friends, especially now with us graduating, us in our jobs, what's happening now. It's like we're kind of more down on our trials and tribulations now. We're trying to understand why now, why God, like what is the purpose of this all?
Well, the interesting thing about God is He doesn't always give us answers. We can ask all the questions we want. That's why Job said, wanted to know why. We don't always know the answers. And even as Christians, when people ask us all those why questions, we have to tell them there are some questions that only God can answer. Yeah. But the reality is whenever you're going through something, whatever it is, even though it could be painful, it's frustrating, all those things are the emotions we can go through. Most times when you go through it, let's say you're on the other side of it, you have a lesson that you banked. So that when another trial comes, you either say, what did I do to get out of that? Or did I pray? Did I go talk to my friend? What did I do? Or how did I grow up a little bit more than I was before I hit that roadblock? And all of us are going to have our different roadblocks. It's just a matter of how we handle it and who we have in the situation. If we learn more to start talking to God about the issues, it will be helpful. Not to mean everything's going to go perfect, but as you start to realize you're not by yourself and that there is a reason for it. You don't understand why. And I heard what you said. Friends are going to get frustrated. Adults are going to get frustrated. Church, whether you're church or in church, when you go through problems, it's not fun, but it's meant to make you grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about is like, how you just broke down the three words you chose? I wanted to know what made you choose the title. And even as I was like reading it, it made me think of the term crash out, which is like what some people describe as like a meltdown or a freak out, or like usually something that actually happens in the midst of a crash. So I wanted to know like what made you ground this study in those 3 words of chosen, troubled, and snatching out.
Sometimes what happens when I get an idea of an episode, and the crash of Paul was what started it out, and then I get to the part where figuring out what was special about him. And I remembered the fact that he was a chosen vessel didn't change the fact that he was going to have the same trouble that God told the disciples all of us were going to have. And I said, what story would best be for what I'm trying to think of as this issue? I don't get the title first. I normally get the scripture first. So when I got the scripture thinking about the crash of Paul, and something was going on in my life too, a lot of the chaos, like I said, about all of us losing people in our family, and a lot of people saying, it's happening so fast. This is unfair. I can't cope. All those words were coming at me, and as I was thinking, I said, well, people are having, I like what you just said, a meltdown. They're having something that is really making them so uncomfortable. They're feeling
Crashing
as though, I never heard that expression, crashing out, but they're having a meltdown. And I was thinking, well, when is an opportunity in the Bible that I can find that a lot of people were having a meltdown?
Yeah. And
a lot of things were coming at them, and how God showed them. In the case here, showed Paul, who was able to show others. So I think that's the one about the snatching out the 3rd word. I had just taught something about Jude, and the word snatching came to my mind after I did chosen and trouble. I said, well, what about those sailors? What about those prisoners? I said, well, Paul was witnessing to them. In a way, even though it sounded crazy faith at the time, he was witnessing to them.
Okay, cool. So one thing about the story with Paul, one of the things that you touched on was being merciful to those who doubt. And what that made me think about is how we could possibly, as Christians, not treat them like their doubt is a sin. Like I thought about the verse in the Bible where it's like, help my unbelief. It's like, you admit that I have unbelief, I have doubt, help me with it. So my question from that was, what does it look like, or what do you both think it looks like to be merciful to those who doubt? Like what does that look like in practical ways?
Break that down, merciful.
Well, I guess like in my mind so I'll start off, like in my mind it's maybe not judging them immediately for the doubt, and just addressing that, like, and kind of validating, like, I understand why you have doubts in this moment, and then before coming in with the verses and the word and how they should feel. So I guess if I broke it down, it's like mercy in the midst of that situation. What does that look like when someone's doubting? What does it look like to be merciful to those who doubt?
Well, I like when you said you're not judging them and you're not putting them down. When I started Milkshake Monday, the whole purpose is because people didn't feel comfortable admitting that they didn't understand. So when somebody's doubting, most times they don't understand what you're saying. They haven't had the level of relationship with God to see him bring you through a trouble. So when they're asking and questioning, that's what they're doing when they're doubting. They're questioning what you say. Is it really real? Is it true? You have to understand they haven't been walking with the Lord. They haven't been going to church or going to Sunday school or the places that you and I have probably gone to learn. So you have to give them some pause to say, give them a break to understand they're baby Christians sometimes.
Yeah.
And even big people who are older Christians, they still don't have a knowledge and truth and trust of what's going on. So I think when you said mercy, I think there's a level of kindness to say all of us are learning. And they haven't learned what we may have learned, but we have to be honest and open to them to say, it's okay to ask the question. It's okay to understand you're doubting now, but God has got you. And even in your doubts, you can come and pray about those doubts and ask him questions and help you. I like that scripture you said, help my unbelief. That father was in turmoil of what was going on with his son.
What father, for the viewers?
When you had said that in the scripture, it says, help my unbelief, there was a demon-possessed child. And Christ was seeing the situation, and the son was throwing himself and almost trying to kill himself. And the father was pleading with Christ, help him, help him. And then Christ said something back to him. And the guy just came back as a father, crushed at seeing his son, and said, help my unbelief. Help me where I don't understand. Just let my boy be okay, and help me get to where you want me to be. But please help us both.
Like, help my faith get there.
Yeah, help my faith, help me grow, help me understand.
Yeah.
But
I think that connects really well to what you were saying. Like, in the midst of like your friend's situation or anyone's situation, it's like we're never arrived. So it's like part of being merciful, I think, is in the midst of all those moments of like trials and tribulations, like realizing you're still on your journey. This is a part of it, and there's like something to get to. Like you can call out to God and say, "Help me get to that next point, that next like growing point for me."
Yeah. I think merciful. From what I got, like kindness is one. I think perspective. Everyone has a different journey in how they were introduced to Christ, or how, you know, their journey. It could be bumps in the road. Even now, like I'm thinking of one instance of we were at an event, a graduation, and a gentleman was like, I'm not ready, or he wanted to do a baptism with all his siblings, but one sibling didn't want to. It's like everyone has a different way of going in their journey of knowing Christ and being a child of God. And I think having that type of understanding, but perspective of like, my journey was in 2016, like everyone's 2010, like different journeys of how we all got into knowing him. So I think understanding why some people have died, like, you know, you probably had that before. I don't know, for me, before the day of baptism, I was scared. I was like, I've been swimming before, but I don't know why I was scared of everyone. Why it's just boop boop, like it was just like
drowning.
Well, even
were you scared of like the water of it or the significance of it, or both?
I think it was significance. I've been down in the water before, but I was like, oh my gosh, like this is like different. This is different. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, it was just like I was scared the week prior. I knew it was happening, and I'm just like, this is actually happening. And you know how they do the singing, like in the hymn. I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish it was just silent and just boop, and I just
I feel like silent would be weirder. No. Like you're walking to this like very ominous thing if they didn't.
Or the people turned around, at least. It was just so, like, all the eyes on me, and I know it's a great day, but like, again, some people could have that fear of like, oh my gosh, and it's a big event. But I get it's a big event, but like, I mean, it's, guys, I'm not the only one.
Well, you never said anything. This is the first time I'm hearing that.
I mean, you're not the only one. I'm sure people like watching, like relate for sure.
Yeah, I didn't know you had any fear because you didn't share any fear. I didn't see any fear, so I didn't even know.
I don't think I was there.
Yeah.
Was I?
No, I don't think so. I was silent. Like I was silent the whole day. Like the Saturday to that Sunday.
Wow.
I was like, I gotta wear white. Like, oh my gosh, it just.
And you hate to be the center of attention, too.
I do, but it was just like, stuff like that, I could understand. I have understanding of when people who say, like, I want to do this, I want to, get baptized, I want to have a deeper relationship with the Lord. I do have my doubts, but it's like, I understand, I come from a perspective of that in the beginning, before 2016, and, at the time I was like, Lord, it was like, when they, give the classes of, I'm gonna wipe away your sins and all those classes, it's like, oh my gosh. And then in the back of your mind is like, I'm just gonna sin after. It's so bad to think that, but it's just like, oh my gosh, like, oh, I'm, wash away my sins, and then you get up the next morning and you be like, and you talk to another person, you lie to them, it's like, dang, I just did sin. Man.
Sin again.
Yeah, just like, stuff like that kind of just like messes with my mind of like, when it comes to that, when you said merciful, so yeah, stuff like that.
I've always thought to myself, like, God knew that doubts could creep in, like He made us. So I think where like the paths diverge is like, what do you do with your doubts? Do you take them to God, or do you like fester in them and then they become something they shouldn't be, like unbelief or other things? Like, I think that's kind of the fork in the road there.
Or I feel like they're not worthy. Like when you have doubt, even after you give your life to Christ. You feel like when you step back in, your sins are cleansed and so forth. But when you sin back in, it's like, am I worthy? Like, I have doubts that God will even love me. Like, stuff like that. Sometimes the spiritual warfare, I feel like, too, with our own, I guess, individual. But, like, I don't know.
And one last thing. Before, like, when you said individual, like, and with the doubts, I think that's why there is benefit in going to a church gathering, whether it's like in a school or a building or whatever, because that collective sometimes is like really heartening to be like, okay, like these other people around me, they weren't worthy at one point in their journey. Like none of us are worthy in and of ourselves, but you get to see how like God redeems all these different stories that are in the gathering with you. So I think the environment that you are like the doubts you might have, it matters what environment you're having them in. If you're having them by yourself as an individual, trying to battle as an individual, like it just gets bigger and bigger. Like I think there's like a cartoon where like this anxiety cloud just gets bigger and bigger. I feel like you get wrapped up in it if you don't have community, like faith community to be plugged into.
And I think a key thing about the community that you choose, that you pray and get plugged into, those people have to be real, meaning for real. To say, I struggled, I had doubts, I grew in this area over time. It wasn't an instant. I got baptized and all of a sudden I didn't want to have sex anymore. I got baptized and all these things. It's miraculously, I was just this perfect Christian. No, I think when you go into a community and you all rally around each other to encourage each other to continue to grow and study and pray and, talk to one another and be encouraged, I think it does help.
Yeah. That actually segues me back to what you said. With Paul and the centurion, you were kind of talking about being mindful of your environment and the influences and who's in your ear and who's in the ear of the people in their ears. So my question is, how can we be mindful of our influences? Like, what does that look like?
It's funny that you said that because I just read something and it was talking about that we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. Yeah. And so when you start to see...
Why you shake your head?
Because she's been talking about this nonstop. She has her quarterly.
Nonstop. I just read
it. It's a thing, though. It's a thing.
Yeah,
it's a principle. Yeah.
Your question was, how do you know? But you will start to see some of the mannerisms that other people have, some of their expressions, how they behave, and certain. Like if you are a cheap person and then you're around somebody that's a giver, you may be a little bit more. Leaning toward, well, maybe I won't be so cheap. I'll actually pay the 10% or the 20%. And, Lord forbid, I'm going to go 30. But it's how they're influencing little by little the things that you're seeing. And if they're bad things, you're going to see that you're having more bad behaviors. And you're making the choice. It's on you.
How can we be mindful? Are you saying, reflect on it?
I think you have to.
Or can you even notice it?
I think we all notice how we change. It's this... Your mindfulness is a matter of feeling what is important to me. What are the values or boundaries that I don't want to cross? If you, for example, don't want to drink, but every time you go with this crowd, you find yourself sipping a little bit more. Your mindfulness is that I set out before I left the house, I'm not going to drink.
Yeah.
I come home and I've had 2 drinks. Okay, what happened? Why did I let that person, that group of people influence me when I don't?
And compromise what I said.
And compromise because if you don't want, I'm using an example of the drinking, but if you don't want to drink and the people you're hanging around drink, are you? And you said the word mindful. Are you mindful? Are those the right type of people you should be spending all the time you should with?
Is that match with discipline though? Like when it comes to that?
You said the word perspective and priorities. I think. You have to figure out who do you want to spend time with and what are the people building you or tearing you down.
Only reason I say this is because Albany, you said this question and I'm like, Mom has been doing this quarterly, like, I'll be driving and she'd be like, who are your 5 friends? I'm like, I am driving, I'm listening to some music, you ask me all this random question, you want me to come out, I say 3 people, she's like, that's all? I'm like, you just put it on me. So when you ask the question, I'm thinking, my friends, when I go out, they know I don't drink. They know I don't smoke. They're not peer pressuring me. They're not doing any of that. They know that I just don't do that. So, and it's a time to, again, be not example per se, but, just say, hey, I'm disciplined enough that if all my friends, drink, is I'm here for them, and they know, in a sense, I'm not going to do that. But when you bring that up, being mindful of friends, it's I don't know, because in the back of my mind, I'm I do reevaluate my friendships because I see, is it going to grow? Mm-hmm. Is it going to not benefit? I don't like the word benefit because it's I've been hearing that, you give me this, I'm giving you this. I'm that's how I think of benefit,
because that sounds transactional.
Yeah,
right?
Versus I'm because then I think maybe they don't have a friend. They don't have a friend.
Your heart gets into it. Well, the reason why benefit doesn't bother me so much is kind of what Dad would say. He was people are always using each other.
Yeah.
I think it's like whether or not you have like, unless you're like keeping count in a transactional way, it's kind of good to be able to use one another. That's my take. Like I feel like it might not be equal, but like I want to know I can rely on you for something, and you can rely on me for something. So eventually, it is going to be like I'm using you, you're using me for like the things that we bring to the table. Because even in your situation, like if any of your friends who do drink right now decide, they're trying to be sober, they know who to hang with. So they use you in that way because they know you're probably the better friend to hang with for them to stay on the course. Like, and you might use them for their perspective or for their like knowledge or something else. But, but I think it is good to have friends who are benefiting you in some way, for sure. Yeah.
So what about in the sake of your relationship with Christ? Are there friends that you know have no interest in Christ and you spend time with them, and in the time do you try to at least, I'm not saying you're not trying to minister, you're not trying to be preachy, I'm not saying that, but they, just like they know you don't drink or smoke, do they know that you have a perspective of your life where God is important? And sometimes if they're going through, they may ask you questions because they kind of know what kind of foundation you're built on.
So the question is, do our friends know that we are in a relationship with Christ and feel like they can ask us questions?
Well, not so much that they ask you questions, but the people you're hanging around with, if they know, for example, shouldn't drink, do they know about your relationship and know that if they do have doubts or questions or something's going on in their life, do you feel that you see them coming towards you because they think you have a different foundation than they do?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. At this point in my life, the friends that I've curated, because it wasn't like, if you take different sections of my life, different friends weren't going to be doing that. But at this point in my life, I think every one of them feels comfortable to come to me, and I do feel comfortable coming to some of them. But yeah, they know. They know.
Yeah, I think. I mean, my friends know. There's a group of them. I mean, with one of my friends, she told me like the day that her father died, I was like, it was like such a shock to me. It's like, oh, I'm so like it just came organically. Like, I'm so sorry, but I was like, at the beginning, I'm like, my friend's calling me like something important. But when she said it, I was like, oh, and me being the first call, I was like, I'm gonna pray for you. I'm gonna pray, and
that's a big deal being the first call.
Yeah, I mean it is, and I didn't know because we haven't spoke for like a couple years, and I was surprised she had my number.
Yeah.
I mean, we text here and there, but we didn't have like that connection through college that much because we were going through our own things, and for drew a brain fart for a second, but but when for friends wise, I think all my friends know like Christ number one, because I when I eat food, before I eat food, I pray. When someone's going through something, I say, I'm going to pray for you. Or, so they know of my faith. In depth-wise, I don't think they have because, again, I'm in the house more so. And I think, too, they kind of mix my funniness with... They see funny faith, but they don't really see faith.
Well, faith. I like that.
But when you just gave your example, you know how painful the loss of somebody, anybody, but I'm even saying a father, a parent, somebody you really love, you're already hurting and you're vulnerable. The fact that they remembered you after 2 years, that's a trust that your witness, your testimony, something about your personhood. I know you said that you're funny, but there's something they've seen that they would be willing to be vulnerable and trust you to say. The first call, like you said, that says a lot. And, that's why I'm saying it, because I don't show my feelings, but there are only a few people I would show if I'm hurting. And that this person, after 2 years, found your number and called you to tell you my dad died and trusted you to respond. Oh, I'm sorry. You could just say, I'm sorry, and done with it. Hang up the phone.
Yeah. And that shows what kind of influence you have on that person when you had your influence on that person to kind of come back to you. And I think that goes back to the whole Paul part, who is in your ear. Yeah. And I think in those moments we all know who we want in our ear and who's going to pour into us versus who's going to just give us stuff that isn't helpful. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of cool that she came back.
Can I go back to what you just said? Because Julius trusted the captain and the actual owner. And Paul had said, don't do it. And he discounted him. But when it came down to Paul saying, if you let those sailors leave, we're going to die. There had been a transformation of, I used to listen to them, I'm listening to him now. Because everything he's saying is he told us not to go. We would have been better off. And now he's saying stuff from God. And so even when people don't believe you or take you seriously, there's a time where like, I see my life going down the drain. I see other friends going down the drain, but here I see her, she's stable. Or I see her, she's kind of leveling out. She's going to a level of maturity. So I think Julius showed us an example where he didn't listen to Paul, but there's something in that relationship that he started to listen to toward the end.
Speaking of not listening to Paul, my next question had to do about Paul's "I told you so." If you already talked about it, so I thought in that moment, I was like, what Paul seemed to be offering those sailors was accountability without shame and without like festering on the problem, but accountability. Like what I said to myself, or the note I took was, be real in acknowledging the situation as it is, but kindly move on into the solution. But in that moment, like Paul had to at least break it down. Like, if y'all had listened to me, like I don't have the exact quote from the Bible, but he let them know, like, this is the situation. And had you listened to me, we'd be in a different situation. That said, I'll move on though and talk and we can get to the resolving of it. But that's not a direct quote from the Bible. Y'all need to look it up for yourselves. But my question to y'all is, why do you think Paul's statement was included in the recounting of this story? Why do you think it was kept in there? What's the significance?
Well, I don't know exactly the significance. I know that when I heard it, it felt like I told you so. And I like you said, he transitioned out of the I told you so. And maybe that was to also give a little dig to Julie. Said, I told you so. And we would be safe and not going through this. And yes, he did a good pivot and said, now we're not going to talk about Crete. That's past. Let's talk about what we got going on now. But this Holy Spirit needed that to be in there for some reason. Maybe to say from the very beginning he had wisdom. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but he surely did it. It was obvious at that point. And as low as they were probably feeling, to hear somebody say, well, we could be better off if we stayed back in Crete. I don't know if I wanted to hear that, but that's why I said in relationships, you have to be very careful when you do the accountability discussion or saying, this was said, but you got to just be very careful.
I think it's just an example of what God knew how us as men would do. We do the I told you so, but we like to rub the I told you so. I like rub the I told you so to your face, and never like to pivot and find a solution. We just like to stay in that I told you so. And I think that was more so of an example of how to go forward with the I told you so. Because sometimes you do the I told you so's, and then God be like, haha, I told you so. Look at you now. You should have pivoted, but look at that. You're down on the floor. You're on the ground. Or something like that. But I always think when it's when it's readings of scripture like that, I think it's an example of how we should go forward when we did have a right way of going about things, and we said, you should have went this way, like I said, and instead of just beating down that person of why this is what happened, this is because of you're not following my direction, to just not consume all your energy on that, because sometimes that could tear that person down. Yeah. So that's what I took from it.
I can see that too, and like what you said as far as like getting focused on the I told you so, because if there was anyone who could have felt like they were right and they had like being high on their horse, it was Paul in this moment, because not only was he right, but he got that direction from God, so he's like double right. Like, and that's like when you I know, like when we feel justified and when we feel like we're on our high horse, we really get high up on that horse. But Paul just was like, nope, we're still on the same level. This is a fact I did tell you, but let's move forward together. And I thought that was a powerful example to leave in there. Yeah.
It wasn't last night, but when Jonah came back to God and said, I told you so that you were going to save those people. That's why I ran away, because I didn't want you to save those people. I don't like them. But I'm saying the audacity of this man who was just in the belly of a fit to come back to God and say, I told you so. I was like,
I don't remember that part of Jonah.
Yes, okay. You have to see it and go to chapters 4 and 3 of Jonah. It's only got 4 chapters. But he didn't want to go to Nineveh, but he said, I told you you were going to do this.
To God?
To God. He fusses back at God and said, I told you so. And basically, God didn't hear him. He said, you wanted me to kill all these people because you don't like them.
An example of how men, because a lot of mankind says the same thing. Like, I told you, I was right before God. And sometimes just be the audacity of Dick Tracy and some people. But we're going to continue.
Yeah. I have one, if you want to do one.
Okay, so you talked about the Holy Spirit. You said Holy Spirit and the Spirit to continue having the revelation knowledge of who God is in our lives. From past to present and future, we can trust God. And when the crash and the crashes in our lives don't kill us, we know that they didn't kill us because God didn't allow them to kill us. Elaborate on that.
So everything, I'm going to break it apart. I'm going to break it apart. It's a lot. First of all, God controls all the things that he allows. When we see Job, you see that Satan wanted to come and do something to Job, and God had to give him permission. So even the crashes, the bad things that happen in our lives, trial, tribulation, whatever you want to call them, the trouble, God has to give permission for that trouble to even happen to us. He also knows in what area of our lives that he is trying to develop and grow us in. So he even may be pinpointed to say what kind of trouble was allowed in our lives. But whenever we go through trouble, we should always realize that God is still with us. And in the midst of whatever's happening, there's something you should always, you use the word mindfulness, and that's in my head right now. Whenever something happens to you, there should be something in your spirit to say, I'm going to be the better or stronger for this after it's over. God wouldn't have allowed this to destroy me because he doesn't want to destroy me. He wants me to have a closer, more intimate relationship with him of trust and factoring in the fact that everything we do from day to day, moment to moment, if we could start letting him order our steps and being aligned with his will, things will, even as things are going bad, we're like, okay, God, how do you want me to navigate this situation? And letting him lead us, and all of a sudden he's leading us through the valley of the shadow of death and getting further and further out of it. So it was a complicated question. If I didn't address any piece of it,
I think you did. I think for me, when I think of so many instances, like, well, you just said Job, like, I cry when I sometimes read the chapter of, like, when all his children died, because I put myself in that and be like, all my children died, like, my next, like, you know, I just have sometimes, I think of that, because I think of the instance, like, I know he wasn't just, whose child's gonna die? Like, you know, he was just, that's a scary thing. Like, I would be nervous. I mean, again, having that trust, having that will of knowing that I'm going to trust the Lord. Even for me, when I have to go through trials and tribulations, like, it depends on what it is, of course. I mean, I only could think of an instance when I had a trial or tribulation of something happening really fast. I started turning on gospel music. I had the windows down, and I was like, Lord, bring me out of this. Bring me out of this. No one's here. Like, no one's here. I need you. Like, I know you're here with me, but I need you. Because I was like, what have I gotten myself into? You know, it would just, but stuff like that, I always think of what, when Dad was teaching about a test and how he said, we're going to be tested as Christians, but we're not only just Christians, we're brand ambassadors for Christ. So I think we shouldn't take that lightly. We're not just like affiliations, how a lot of these, you know, businesses do affiliation. You get percentages off, you get money and stuff. But I feel like brand ambassadors more so of speaking and showing that, hey, after you get baptized, after you give your life to Christ, it's not going to be all good and, you know, we're not going to, you know, it's not going to be all handy dandy like you hear a lot of these pastors say. It's definitely going to be the trenches. It's the trenches. Yeah. I think personally, you say, oh my gosh, you know, like we have these Sundays, but it's like, man, those Sundays are really me, you know, lifting me out of the trenches. Yeah. But then when I come back on Monday, it's like bring in the trenches. It's like, yeah.
What's wild about that is I think to myself all the time, the trenches are going to happen in life regardless. I can't imagine trying to navigate the trenches without God.
Yeah.
And what you said, and to connect it to what you said, like, God is with us through all the stages of the crash. Before the crash, during the crash, after the crash. And I think one of the things that's, like, so encouraging is that there is an after.
Yeah.
And, like, even when you're in the midst of it, like, kind of looking forward to the after that God is going to get you to, that can be encouraging. And I remember I was at the gym one time. This is like at the beginning of this year when all of those like Dōes related contract terminations were happening, and I am in that field where a lot of my contracts were terminated. So it kept me in this like very turbulent, shaky place employment wise. And I was at the gym and we were having some kind of like some kind of chill class where they were like, you know, set your intentions and like stretch it out and be calm. And one of the things that came to me in the midst of that was like God reminding me, Albany, I'm not gonna let anything bad happen to you. Have I ever? There are so many things that I thought were like the end, and they weren't. Over and over, they like all these things he's brought me through. So even when I shared that with the instructor, they were kind of hesitant, like, you losing your job is actually a bad thing. What do you mean? It's like, because in the grand scheme, God's not going to let anything bad happen to me. Like, there is an eternity waiting for me. So he's going to get me there. Like, there may be bumps and, like, trenches and things to navigate before I get there. But, like, he's never let anything truly bad, like, lasting bad, unredeemable bad happen to me. So that's what I think of in the midst of, like, crashes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I still have all the feelings and all the, like, shakiness in the midst of them. But that helps ground me in, like, remembering that God is there at every stage of this crash. Yeah. And there's an after waiting on me.
When you started talking about Job and the loss of all of his children and you know the fear of yourself, it made me think about Dad. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know, as much as this is a real thing to say, somebody that loved God that much and God let him suffer. And, you know, I had to go through the thought of saying, wow, he suffered. I mean, he just didn't instantly die. There was a suffering to that. And then for how it affected all of us. I mean, it was the reverse. Job saw his family, children die. Mm-hmm. In our case, we saw a main person in our life die. And we were like the left behind. And that questioning, I don't know if I had the questioning of the why, but the after effects of that was a big blow, just like it was blow for 12 children and then his income and all the things there. So I just think that what Albany has shared about having some understanding of who God is, and that no matter what the heartache of the crash is, no matter, because it could be death, it could be financial security, it could be all those different things, but if you have the confidence to say, God is going to be with me, he's never going to leave me or forsake me, and he's going to care for me. And even when, like your friend, the hurt, any hurt that we have, any vulnerability we have, there's a trust that God's got us like a father.
Yeah, and I have the thing on my wall. I have this thing on my door that we got actually weirdly at a funeral that I didn't even attend. I don't know why I needed to say that though. But it says, trusting in God is living life at its very best. Keep trusting. And I always have that because I think it really is a true statement. Like, if you really trust in God, like, the best. It's like the best. It might not seem like it, you know, in certain situations, but it really truly is the best because it helps in the end. It helps because I see a lot of people around me that say, how did you get through that? Or how did you do this? It's like all through God. Mm-hmm. And when people come to me with the situation, I always now ask in my prayers with God, it's like, use me, of course, but use my mouth, my words, use your words and put it through my mouth, like mm-hmm. what to say. Yeah. But you know,
I like to ask God to airdrop it to me, like because I always want to go into a conversation, especially like sensitive ones, or prepared, mm-hmm. and I'm like, I might not have it, so Lord, just like give me the script when I get there. Yeah. Because I can't rely on me to get it. Yeah. But what I appreciate about kind of what we were saying is some of what we are saying might sound really strange to unbelievers, and that was in the Milkshake Monday as well. So I actually wrote down what we say and what we believe. Like, we've been sprinkling in scriptures and we've been saying things, not churchy things, but like things that obviously show where our faith is. And those things might sound kind of odd to unbelievers. For example, Paul saying that things are looking up in the midst of all that chaos. So my question is, how do you navigate sharing your faith, like, with how it comes off to those who don't understand?
A lot of times I don't use specific scriptures with people who are unbelievers. I put it in a story or an example of my life, but I don't come out, like I said a couple of times, the scriptures like you said, but if I'm talking to somebody I know does not know the Lord, I will find a way, almost like a parable, to give explanation.
Like Jesus.
Like Christ, like Christ sharing something. He did parables because he didn't want people to know. I use stories to try to help people understand a concept that I know. I'll think of what the biblical base of what I want to say, and then I try to put it in an example, especially if I'm at work. I know I'm not supposed to be, preaching at work or that kind of stuff, but I'll always use some kind of way to explain something, and especially when we were going through the Dōes stuff. We did lose our contract, but before that there was so much anxiety, and I said, everywhere, and I was trying to show that people are smart and talented, and that there's some reason that God is going to let us go to maybe another place, but we're still going to be able to show those talents and gifts and things that he has for us, and just don't be afraid, because you really can be paralyzed in the fear of it. And that's why I say this is the time that you really want to trust God. If you know God, this is the time to trust him. And I say, if you don't know how to pray, just say, help me. And I'll say, help me get through this. And those are not real long scriptures, but when some of those people were freaking out, I said, well, we're just going to have to talk to God and ask him to help us get through this.
Gotcha. I'm going to pass it over to you. Do you need me to restate the question, or?
Actually, no, I'm good.
Okay.
I think for me, I'm different. So, I always think, too, it's as a child of God, Christ-like. So, even if a person doesn't know, faith or is not knowing of God, I hope that when they first encounter me, that they see something that, the Lord uses me to, within that person to say, oh my gosh, who is this person?
Just the aura.
The aura, basically, And even when at work, my coworkers, they all know, I'm not that type of person who's going to just shy away of, my faith. They know, they see the Bible, they see the scriptures. When they come into my cubicle, they just know they're going to get a word. So it's just not going to be hidden or something,
Yeah.
And, even too, with one of my coworkers, she's like, leave religion out of it. I said, can't talk to me then, because it's just I don't know how else to...
I don't have anything else for you.
Yeah, I don't have anything else for you. That just is not in my nature. And when she actually said that, I was like, I've never had that come out of my mouth, but I can't do that. But when people who don't know Christ, I kind of... we talk about life, and I say, we talk about spill stuff, and they're like, oh, are you a faith? I was like, yeah, and I am. And they ask you, oh, who do you believe in? I was like, Jesus, hello. And they're so surprised because I'm down to earth. I'm not with the foolishness, of course, but I am funny. And I'm again, a lot of them say, oh, you're down to earth. I never meet those type of people.
Or those type of Christians.
Those type of Christian.
Yeah.
And I now, as of now, I'm taking the word Christian a little bit back. I'm just saying, I'm a disciple, I'm a brand ambassador for Christ. Because I think sometimes they put this label of, Christian, and I'm like, oh, you guys do the gloves, and I'm like, oh, no. Those days, I'm not that. And they have a bad experience, and they think, oh, the next person they see who's a Christian is going to bring that experience. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Faith. I don't have none of that trauma, unfortunately, that you had. But I really, but as
church hurt.
Yeah, and it's just you might not have been to church, or you might never went to church, but hey, there are ways for you to, slowly but surely. And some of them say, I'm not wanting to go to church. Well, that's why, and maybe COVID brought this, but you can go online. You can start with a prayer.
It's accessible.
It's accessible.
Yeah.
And, and we have, I have people around me now, because I always laugh about this now. It's Lord, I always prayed about using me. And it's oh, you're actually using me. This is crazy. I really was.
Oh, you heard that.
You heard that. I was okay, I have to talk more. And it's oh, okay. But I think that takes, as Christians, out of our comfort zone. Because I did say I wanted to be challenged, and I wanted to be outside my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Examples.
This.
He hears our prayers.
Yeah, he does. But I think that's a key thing, when talking to people who don't know Christ. Because I think even the homeless events, people that we encounter don't know him. But when they, they could encounter us. And even too, sometimes I pass people, walking by, and now, hello, maybe that could brighten up their day. You know, stuff like that could make a difference.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, who knows? The Lord could use my hello and the next person, hey, let me talk to you about Christ. When before someone would just pass them by and they would see someone say, hey, let me talk to you about Christ. Oh, I gotta go. Mm-hmm. You know, type of energy.
Yeah. I wanted to come back to what you said about, like, labeling yourself as a Christian and then doing so at work, because I found that I still hold very tightly to being a Christian, mostly because Christ is in the name. I'm cool with it, right? And people and their assumptions, I can't control that. So, but you'll hear me say one of two things. It's either Christian or person of faith. Like, I'll say that, especially at work or in a professional environment, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a person of faith. So, and what I've done, at least, like, to kind of not exactly share my faith, but to kind of put it on the table, is because I don't have a cubicle. I don't have scriptures. Like, all they're gonna know is what I say, because I'm like fully remote for my job.
Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. But the way I ground them in my perspective is, so I'm a person of, like, for example, when they would ask me, like, oh, how'd you make this decision, or what made you do this, and I would say, I'm a person of faith, so what I did is pray, blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm a person of faith, so what drives me is this. Or I'm a person of faith, I see it this way. Mm-hmm. And no one usually asks me what the faith is, but I'm like, the principles, I think some of them can rightly assume it's Christian. Mm-hmm. And if they're willing to go further and ask me, now we can open up and have a conversation. But the way that I think, so my background and some of the work I've done is revolving around equity and inclusion. And we try to include so many people, and what I've learned in that field is, like, when you're talking about people, have a people first mentality. So not just a disabled person, but sometimes you might refer to someone as a person with a disability. So that's why I'm like, as I talk to people, I'm like, I'm a person of faith. Mm-hmm. That is, like, that's who I am, it's in me, and it grounds my experience and in my worldview. Mm-hmm. So I think in having the boldness and not pride, but just, like, the confidence to share that part of yourself, should never be a problem. I think it's hard for people who want to say they're a Christian, because there are so many, like, connotations that come with that. But it is time to kind of reclaim, if that's your basis, if that's your foundation, to kind of, like, make it that. And it's not a denouncement on anyone else, but, like, as for me and mine, and I think the verse is, like, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That should kind of be in our spirits as Christians, in my opinion, like, at all times. So whatever flows out is flowing from that perspective. And for me, I'm like, I'm just going to disclaim that to you right now.
Yeah.
You know, if you're, like you said, if you're asking me, you're going to hear about Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to ask me, but I already let you know from the jump. Yeah. That's what you're going to get.
Yeah.
But I think it's
beautiful. In love.
Yeah. Right. I think it's beautiful that you both, and I hope myself too, that we're not trying to be typecast as religious, because they it's so easy to discount people that you said the word religion. I never act religious or act fake or act like high and mighty, because they've already got that. When I say there's a perception for people who don't have a relationship or a person of faith, that the people who are of faith, whatever that faith may be, are acting as though they're beneath, that these people are beneath them, that they're lesser. Yeah. And I don't know what your friend was thinking when she said leave religion out of it. I said, but that's our core. That's a coworker. that your core is built on something, and if it's built on being a person of faith, therefore things that you talk about.
Well, I think I just cut it short, basically, because I think when you start, I mean, the casual conversations I have is like, what's a religion? Oh, what's the denomination? It's like, oh my gosh, like, y'all, I love Jesus. Like, let's just get to the bottom of it. Like, I don't think I have to say, oh, I'm part of that, because it's like, once you get to that, it's like, oh, you know, because it's so...
It makes people close their ears little by little. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't believe like they do.
Yeah. But I love the atmosphere I'm at, because I think with the people I'm around, we're open to conversations. We're open to hearing of my faith openly, with no judgment or anything like that. But also, you know, being transparent. You know, coworkers could say, like, I want to know more about it. Okay, like that's good. We can,
now they know they can come to you.
Yeah, we can have lunch, and we can. I mean, I keep my Bible, my actual Bible there. It's like, hey, during lunch we could read, you know, a chapter, or we could watch, you know, some type of podcast. you know, it doesn't have to be of these newer podcasts, you know, all these things mom's been watching and so forth. It could just be like we're watching Breakfast Club and stuff, and we you know, take turns and just conversate. We pause the video and we just conversate about our lives. But that's growing a relationship, and then that relationship could be growing into, hey, let's come, you know, not the whole like, let's come to church. Hey, what you doing Sunday?
Yeah.
Hey, let's spend an hour, you know, you can come to my you know, my little shindig. What's a shindig? Oh, worship. Okay, cool. Let's go. I mean, you know, it's a way, because
it's
people,
like more organic.
Yeah, because you know, he said, oh, a lot of people say come to church. I was like, gotcha. I'm gonna change the words. Let's come to the shindig. Worship. Okay, cool. And you know, just work it. You know, work your way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what we talked about a lot has to do with the assumptions that come along with Christianity, and I wanted to kind of connect that back to something that was happening with Paul.
Mm-hmm.
What you were talking about was like the snake situation, and how people and their assumptions will consistently get it wrong. So, for example, Paul, they started thinking he was a murderer because he got that snake bite. They thought that he was a murderer and that the snake bite was the consequence. And the other thing that they thought was that he was possibly a god. And both of these are incorrect.
Right.
So my question in the midst of like you sharing about that was, how do you block out people's assumptions and opinions that aren't grounded in God's truth? Like those assumptions and opinions, like for more color to it, they might seem logical from a worldly view, but how do you block them out when you know that they're not grounded in God's truth and His word and His, you know, His will?
The word blocking out is my part of it, but the part that I will let them know is they're wrong. But then if they continue to fester in their assumptions and their wrong understanding, I don't give them space in my I would say rent in my head. Because if I've told you what you're thinking about me is incorrect, and you choose to continue with that thought pattern, I don't need to give more time to it in my brain. Now, as you keep saying it to other people, those people have to make their own decisions. They can come to me and I can correct them and give them the right understanding. But there are a lot of people that are going to say bad things about you possibly in your life. But it's going to be your witness, your word, your character, how you're living. And you can tell the truth, and the truth will catch up. Yes, they say a lie can get around the world faster, but I believe if we stand on the truth, we're speaking the truth. Once you put it out there, I'm not going to give them much more credit about it. I had that years ago where they were saying things about me about something totally off base. And once I said what the truth was, and they kept on saying, I was like, but then the truth got found out, and they looked a fool. So.
It's crazy how I care less about what people think. I care more about like food. I don't know why that.
What?
I don't know why that came to my mind when you were speaking. Like, I care less about what people say, if that's the question. Like say.
Well, it's like their assumptions, their opinions. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
I could care less. I mean, the people who of course, you know, you care about what your parents say and so forth. But now when you get older, you kind of just like start stepping back. It's like, Mom is wrong. Like,
facts.
You know, sometimes our parents are wrong about things, and it's okay.
Because they're people.
Yeah, they're people, and it's just like, you know, you take it in, and you can either just let it out of the ear and or have it resonate with you. But I have too much filing, like my filing cabinets in my head are just overflowing. Just so I really don't really take anything serious, maybe except of course my faith. But I don't really care. Maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. I just don't care. I mean, I care, but
no,
I don't.
I mean, I don't want to label it as good or bad, but I think it can be good, it can be bad, but I think it is overall good to have a filter and be able to like let things pass through it and not like kind of, even with what you said about what parents say to you, whether your parent was a good one, a bad one, like I think we are blessed with good ones for the record. But no matter what, they're still people. So like someone once told me, it's like chicken, stay with me, you say you like food. So it's like you eat the meat and you spit out the bones. Like there's some good stuff that they're going to say, and then there's some off-base stuff. There's some like stuff that's like not relevant to you or not helpful for you, and you spit that out like it's like the bones. So I mean, yeah, I get where you're coming from as far as like not caring, because you can't care about what everyone says. Everyone has something to say.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. And it goes back to, again, if you want validation or feedback.
Yeah.
That's something we're all fighting. with.
True, that's true.
Yeah.
But as you get older and more assured of yourself, I think you get better about knowing the difference and being confident and just knowing you're doing the best that you can. So.
Yeah. I didn't have any other questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have questions.
Yay,
I'm
okay.
actually glad that Albany did all the questions.
She didn't do all the questions.
I feel like I had a good
No,
amount.
she had
but-
a good amount though.
Yeah.
I was glad that you went along with letting her ask you questions because Faith usually says, it's all my
I mean,
questions.
we're all here together.
No,
like,
I'm glad. I'm glad that Faith did speak because I think what I have heard feedback from those who are listening is that they like the dialogue of both of us, but they like what your perspective is.
I
So
mean, I feel
funny
like it gives you a break.
When you get off this camera, right, your voice changes.
How does
It's
it
like
change?
this is a professional
You
voice.
do have an on-camera voice,
No,
but
like-
I think we all have different. I think we all have like a little
I haven't
like
got there yet.
a little slate of voices. No, you have you can change your voice too. I think we all have like a little slate of voices, and if you like, kind of like not a Rolodex, but like one of those like accordion things, and you just file through which one you need naturally. So
Code switching, right?
it is exactly that. It is code switching. That was a very long explanation
Yeah,
for
I
code
just
switching.
yeah,
Yeah.
about to say that.
I learned that concept, so I know what you're talking about, code
Awesome.
switching.
And that's actually why I'm glad that
Right.
you were, like you said, like Faith was sharing while I'm here, because that's the true 3-generational benefit you get if we all are here right now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to thank you, Albany, for joining us tonight. Thank you, Faith,
Thank
as
you.
well.
Thank
And
you,
like you said, the Lord is using all of us, and I think that's wonderful. And I want to share that I appreciate those of you who have been buying A Leap of Faith and Fast and Hard. The bundle is for sale for the month of June for $45. 10 of you have bought the Audible. I am asking you all to buy the Audible of A Leap of Faith, A Life Filled with Questionable Choices. 20 plus hours it took for us to actually get what you find is just 4 hours and 52 minutes. But I just tell you, the people who have listened to the Audible have really been blessed, and I hope that you'll take advantage of the book, both of the books. And we hope that you will join us on the next episode. Thank you for participating in Milkshake Monday Backdrop for the season of 8, which is going to be a shorter season. We're doing this, so if you got questions, please let us know. All right, Faith, go cut it off. Thank you. Cut that off, Albany.